Welcome everyone to the Creative Contessa. I am the Contessa and this is my medieval sewing party, and we are in Daegu, South Korea at, believe it or not, a Starbucks. And I'm going to be getting some much needed repairs done on my 15th century Burgundian stockings, and I thought I would take you all with me. So if you're watching this as a recording and if you have any questions, go ahead and pop them in the comments and I will answer them. Otherwise, if you're in the live chat, feel free to ask questions as we go along. I'm hoping that the sound is okay because there's unfortunately no one yet in the live chat to let me know if there is. Just check and make sure all messages. Okay, all messages are on. Well, I am, as I said, today's a repair day. I've just finished a whirlwind, another around the world journey involving ending once more in a medieval living history event, which meant I had to take my medieval living history gear all over the world to get to the event. And as always, living in my medieval clothes leads to the need for repairs. So there were holes in the bottom of the soles of these, and so I'm just going to put an entirely new sole on. This is fustian, the white cloth. It is a heavy-duty fabric, and it's actually heavier duty than the linen out of which these hosen are made. So yeah, if you're in the live chat, just drop a note in, if you're there, drop a note in the live chat whether you can hear me or not. Yeah, Takeda, good God, Takeda, it's middle of the night, oh dark 30 where you are. Do you not sleep, sir? I mean, I know you've told me before that you don't really sleep, but yeah, just let me know how the sound is. We, of course, have no way to tell. So I'm just working on some repairs, and no, I'm not wearing medieval clothing. It's my medieval sewing party because I'm sewing medieval things, not because I'm in medieval gear. But I am, however, in a building that is built like a medieval Korean building would have been. And believe it or not, this is the most beautiful Starbucks in the world, right here in Daegu. So yeah, sound is fantastic, wonderful. Hola, Nat, ¿qué tal? Yeah. Saludos de Corea del Sur. Welcome everyone. Yeah. So I'm just threading my needle, and I'm going to be waxing my thread. For those who are getting into hand sewing, remember that you should have a little, in this case, a cube of beeswax with you, and you should always wax your thread before you go to sew. The waxing of the thread has many beneficial effects for your sewing. One, it will smooth out your thread and prevent it from fraying, because as you pull your needle back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with the thread through the fabric, you're going to wear it down. That doesn't happen with a sewing machine, but that does happen with hand sewing. Two, if you actually wax your thread, you will, it will not knot. You will prevent it from knotting as much, which is of course really important when you are hand sewing, because knots are frustrating and they take a lot of time to work out of your thread. And time is a precious non-renewable resource. So this is very old wax, but it doesn't matter. Wax never goes bad, it doesn't spoil. And we know that honey and wax don't spoil because we found honey and wax, beeswax, from ancient Egyptian tombs that are both still perfectly good and unspoiled. Gracias, Ana. Estudié en Granada, en España. Por eso hablo con un acento castellano. Yeah. So is anyone working on anything on their own today? I know we haven't done a medieval sewing party in forever. That is in part due to my travels. I just was never in a place, I was rarely in a place where I could or where I had sufficient internet to do it. And I have been in Korea now for a week, but the jet lag going from the United States to Korea is so gruesome because it's basically the other side of the world, that my body punishes me for that much of a change, and I just basically don't sleep properly for days and days. And unfortunately, for live streaming, you need to have some kind of energy and focus to be able to guide you through this live stream experience. So I'm finally to the point where I'm getting composite 8 hours of sleep a day by sleeping 4 hours at night and 4 hours in the middle of the day. So yeah, welcome back to my live stream world. But on the positive side, I was able to finish up my long promised video on the fascinating lives of medieval rings that is on the channel. It's 20 minutes long. I think it's a really good romp. I think you'll learn a lot, and I think you'll enjoy it quite a bit. So if you haven't checked out the new video on the fascinating lives of medieval rings, I highly recommend that you do so, but not right now. You don't have to leave the party to do that. You can do that later. My travels brought me through many fascinating places. For the most part, though, we were focusing really hard on ancient history, on ancient Roman and ancient Phoenician history. So, you know, we didn't get to do as many cool some cool exploration of medieval spaces, but I do appreciate learning about ancient Roman and ancient cultures as well. I mean, I appreciate learning about the pre-modern history of pretty much anywhere I go. So yeah, just so you know what I'm doing here. So I've pinned this sole on to the bottom of my stocking. This is the stocking that I need to repair. And I'm just going to actually do a blanket stitch all the way around. I'm not going to turn the edges under because that's going to create a thick seam that I then have to step on, and that would be uncomfortable. So I'm just going to do a blanket stitch all the way around this raw edge. Basically a buttonhole stitch, blanket stitch, and that will catch the loose threads and sufficiently for washing. So that is really all you need if you're doing this. I would not recommend turning it under and sewing it with the edges turned under. That will create a nice look, but it will not be comfortable to actually put on your feet. And what I've discovered after years of wearing medieval stockings in medieval conditions, dancing and walking and being on my feet all day for days on end, is that I wear them out in exactly 2 spots. It will not be shocking when you find out that I wear them out on the balls of my feet, especially the big toe area. I have an evil big toenail. And on the heel. And everything in the middle is just fine because for some reason the arch of my foot does not come in contact with the ground. Funny that. And for a while I was actually trying to patch just the specific spots where the holes formed, but I realized that why do that when I can just re-sole the whole thing and save myself the trouble of cutting out little custom patches. So yeah, my new repair technique for all of my stockings is to just put a new sole, attach a new sole onto whatever's left of the original one. And that seems to be working so far. Yeah. Thank you for that compliment, Takeda. Yeah, it was a lot of work. The ring video, people, I think, underestimate the amount of work often that goes into my videos anyway, because I believe in good research, in primary source research, in bringing you real, authentic visuals, none of this AI garbage. You all know I hate AI. I loathe AI. I loathe AI. I will never, ever, ever use AI in my work. I will not use it for research. I will not use it for the art. I will not use it to create my videos, right? At least not intentionally. And if I find I have it, I cut the AI out or I delete the video, as happened in one case. So yeah, I did a lot of hard research on that ring video. I think I probably did about 100 hours of research to collect all the, following all the trails, getting down to the primary source evidence instead of just things other people had written about primary sources, exploring inventories and expense accounts and chronicles, which is why I'm not doing very many of those long format videos anymore, because they take way more time than I earn money from them. The reality is that times are tough these days and people just don't have the money to support creators like me, and that's fine. It just means in order to earn money, I need to do other things than spend 150 hours making a 20-minute video. So yeah, I'm thinking of shifting to see if there's actual interest in me continuing to create the long format video essays. I'm thinking of specifically setting up a GoFundMe for people who just want to support that one thing, that specific topic and that specific format, and see if we actually get enough, if we raise enough funds to make it worth my time because YouTube does not push my long format videos in the least. If you go check out the medieval ring video, it's got like maybe 200 views. That's like $2 from YouTube for those 200 views. It's nothing. So yeah, I've got to be more savvy about how I use my time for making a living, and unfortunately the long format videos aren't it. The live streams though, YouTube pushes, and I get a lot more money for the live streams than I do for the long format videos. So there it is. I don't know, what do you all think about the GoFundMe idea for those who want to support specific long format videos on specific topics? You know, I've got amazing research foo, so I can really put it to good use. Just for whatever reason, YouTube has never figured out how exactly to push my videos. And I don't know why. It's figured it out for my travel content, no problem, but my medieval living history content doesn't work. YouTube has no idea what to do with it, just no clue at all. What is my favorite historic period in fashion? Oh, that is really hard. You know, it's if we're just looking at the clothes, let's see, if we're looking at Europe, you know, gosh, that is really hard. Looking at just the clothes, if you completely ignore all the material culture stuff, I really like the 12th century. I really, really, really like the 12th century a lot. It's a very elegant look. There's a lot of gorgeous embroidery. It's very, for men and women, it's very, very sleek and swanky, especially the French fashions. I would say possibly the 12th century. It's also for me another one of those quintessentially medieval looks. But unfortunately, in the 12th century, we have zero evidence of dance and minimal evidence of real solid evidence of how secular music was in the 12th century. So that's what moved me to the 15th century, was because you know, that's the first era. The 12th century, 15th century is the first era when we have prima facie evidence of dance and music and a whole plethora of other aspects of medieval material culture, rules for games. You know, that's when we really start to get real clues about daily life at the granular nitty-gritty level, so we can really recreate it. But dance and music being primary among that, because there are no dance manuals before the 15th century, none. There are no descriptions in Europe that I've found, that any dance researcher has found, sufficiently detailed of dance before the 15th century to allow us to faithfully and honestly recreate dances. If anyone has told you that they know something about that they have been dancing 14th or 13th century dances, they're either misinformed or they're just bald-faced lying. They're dancing a very conjectural creation that is inspired by the music and by some visuals they have seen, but there's no dance manuals from before the 15th century. So that's why I moved up to the 15th century. Because actually my 12th century clothes, the 12th century is where I started, did not feel right when we did 15th century dances, because as it turns out, dance is tied in pretty heavily with fashion. So the kind of clothes you have influence the kind of dances you have. And so if you're wearing the wrong era of clothes, it is likely that those dances will not move the right way. It's why I don't like doing English country dance in my 15th century clothes. I especially hate doing English country dance in my Burgundian clothes, because they're nothing even vaguely like 17th century English clothing. So yeah, but if you're talking about pure fashion in Europe, I would say 12th century, very elegant, lots of gorgeous embroidery and smocking and long lines, elegant for men and women, yeah. But I do also really I do like the 15th century clothes, do not mistake me. There's just such interesting diversity across 15th century Europe. There's a real diversification that happens in the 15th century versus earlier centuries. So, you know, I really appreciate that. And of course, the 15th century Burgundian fashions are an iconic medieval look also, and I look good in them. Yeah. uh, yeah, so Takeda says, I'm not good at predicting internet workability. Yeah, it's, the thing about the algorithm is that the YouTube algorithm, it really doesn't know what to do with my channel. It doesn't at all. I don't know why, because it's figured out what to do with other similar creators, but just mine, it has no clue about. Even my getting dressed videos, which are excellent, if I do say so myself, and should get shit tons of play, they don't. The most play they get is from searches, not from YouTube actually putting it in front of people. So there it is. So yeah, I'm thinking of starting GoFundMe campaigns for specific projects and see if we get enough funding to actually go forward with the project. And I would need significant funds, honestly, because 150 hours of my life is not, yeah, that's in the thousands of dollars. That's not in the tens or even hundreds. So we'll see. But otherwise, I will absolutely I'm going to resume my live stream with ferocity. I'm going to try to do a live stream every day going forward of some kind, medieval sewing party or medieval story time. Or cooking, I have returned, or lute practice, yes, my condottiero and his medieval lute practice. I have been doing a lot of research, reading up in my cookbooks to pick recipes to explore with you all in a real time to do cooking together. So we will definitely be doing more live medieval cooking show with the Contessa. If you have any requests for recipes, medieval recipes, you would like to explore to recreate together, you would like to see me recreate for you, drop it in the live chat or the comments if you're watching this as a recording, and I absolutely will 100% look into it and see if I have the capabilities where I currently am to do so. For those just joining, welcome to my medieval sewing party. I am the Contessa, and I am at a historically designed Starbucks, Hanok Starbucks in Daegu, South Korea. So yeah, we have a interesting setting. This is one of my favorite places to go in the afternoon and take advantage of the energy that's here because I'm an energy vampire, and get some crafting done, get some work done, work on some of my travel vlogs. I've had some interesting comments and questions in the comments under videos that I thought I would address here. And of course, if you have any questions about medieval material culture, about me, about what I'm doing, pop them in the live chat and I will definitely answer them. Yeah, I do love going into the nitty-gritty of dishes when I do a cooking show, and also when I do a cooking class, because I also teach cooking classes as an experience. One of the things that's important for me is understanding the science behind the foodstuffs and sharing that science with you all. So, cooking is not just about creating food, that is part of it, but for me, it's about the science. It's about understanding why these techniques work. It's also about understanding the history of the techniques, which is why medieval cooking show makes really good sense for me. There's been some really tasty dishes I've been looking at. There's an egg tart that I was looking at. There's a chicken, there's a cookbook by a cook who worked in the royal papal court in the 15th century, and it's a unique cookbook because it actually, each of the dishes, the head cook, this chef, actually says, and this dish is good for Germans, and this dish is good for Italics, and this dish is good for Spaniards. So because he's working in this very international court, in an international kitchen, he gets to experience and cook all of these dishes from all over the known world. And then he shares with his readers what he thinks is actually best for each of his audience. And by best, I think he means this is what they like the best. So there's a bunch of very interesting recipes in his cookbook, and there's one that is it's a sweet dish. It is pastry on the bottom, like pie pastry, like pâte brisée, and on top of that comes a lump of marzipan that then he actually says to mold. If you have a wooden mold, to give it a nice shape, stamp a pattern into it, and you just bake that. So it's like a marzipan pastry, and that just sounds so tasty. Now, I don't eat wheat, so I might, in my version of it, I may substitute almond flour and some other medieval flours that would also work instead of the wheat flour, but you know, the product will be the same. And then he's got this egg tart. He calls it an herb egg tart, but he uses 9 different green herbs, some of which I absolutely can't get anywhere in the world at this point anymore, because they've reverted to just being considered weeds in Western cuisine. But he actually chops up these herbs, and then he squeezes the juice out and it goes in the tart. And it doesn't say what he does with the squeezed out herbs, which I think is interesting, because in general medieval people didn't waste a thing. So I'm just going to assume that he must have saved those herbs for a different recipe where they just needed squeezed out herbs for bulk or something, fiber, I don't know. That tart though looked really tasty. Then there's this chicken tart he has where you put a crust on the bottom, and it's possible that the crust is just water and flour, because he says that the tart pan, he says you should coat it in lard, then you put in the crust, and then you put another layer of lard on the inside of the crust. And then you put down a layer of cooked chicken, and then on top of that comes this egg and herb mixture, and then you cook that briefly under the coals, as he says. And then you take it out and you crack egg yolks on top of that and put cinnamon on top, and then you finish cooking it. So that sounds like a really fun one to play with also. Yeah, I made the mistake of doing that while I was hungry, so I may have read through more recipes than I reasonably should have in preparation for the next cooking show. Because I was thinking, oh, and we can do this and we can do that. But the reality is that honestly, one recipe for cooking show is really enough when it comes to medieval cuisine, especially because I prefer to prepare the ingredients in as medieval a way as possible, meaning I'm not going to use a food processor. I'm going to use my knife and a cutting board. I'm going to grind the spices by hand. So that all takes time. So really one recipe per cooking show is enough, but I've got some fun things planned. So just so you all know, I am watching the live chat, but unfortunately it tends to kind of come all in bunches for whatever reason. So yeah. Hey Titanic, I know, you all think this is the Titanic hat. It's not, but yeah, it is iconic for me in any case. So is anyone else working on anything at the moment? Project-wise, creative-wise, any kind of research you all are doing? I am still working on my Not a Henin. It did not get finished in time for the event. For those of you who are channel members or patrons, though, on Patreon, there is I did put out an update on that with some really good information for you. So if you'd like to see the update on my Not a Henin, my tall princess hat, then become a member or a patron on Patreon and you'll have access to that video. I am planning to do a separate cover for that can be removed. It's going to be pearled in fleur-de-lis with some gold thread as decorative elements sort of interspersed between the fleur-de-lis, the giglios as they say in Italian, or lilies as they're called in English. So yeah, that's coming. That will be coming. Now that I'm also back in Korea, I can finish working on my new 15th century Franco-Burgundian gown. because I'm going to be doing the long seams on that by machine, because as I've explained, my proclivity for doing everything only by hand means that I have fallen way behind the power curve to replace all the gowns that are pretty worn out at this point. So that is why I will be using the machine for the long seams. Anything that's visible on the surface, I'll still be finishing by hand. But for the next several gowns, I'm going to have to do the long seams by hand, by machine. I just don't have the time with actually doing the content creation to then also do the seams by hand. It's unfortunate, but there it is. You know, just staying abreast of all the comments and making short videos every day and making posts every day, that takes hours actually. It really does. Yeah. Tomorrow morning my time, I am, by the way, GMZ +9, if you're wondering in what time zone I am. I'm currently in South Korea. So tomorrow morning my time, which is about 13, 14 hours from now, we will be I will be resuming my collaboration with Philip from Irish Medieval History. We will be doing another Medieval Buzz session. We'll be talking about the latest in medieval news and some of the controversies that are currently running around the medieval living history world. Right now, the current controversy is hygiene in the Tudor era, actually. So we will be addressing that topic and some of the hideous myths, literally disgusting myths, that have been going around incorrectly about hygiene in the Tudor era. And we'll be setting the record straight. So if you are interested in reading, listening, and watching about the latest fun medieval news and also the buzz about hygiene in the Tudor era, then tune in later on today and or tomorrow, depending on your time zone. It is scheduled on my channel, so you can see when it is, and the time you see will be adjusted for your local time. So, you know, if you'd like to stay abreast of my published videos and be alerted when I go live, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell, and make sure right-click on the bell and click all for notifications. Otherwise, YouTube will decide for you what you should know about. Rather than tell you whenever I go live or publish something. Yeah, welcome to the world. Yeah, so if you are in love with the Tudor era, then tune in. We have some fun things. I will go ahead and little spoiler, they did bathe. Everyone bathed. Not in the way you may think, but they washed their bodies. They did not just let themselves get filthy, dirty, disgusting. You know, humans are still humans, and we know that they recognized when things smelt bad, and they recognized when things were dirty, and they recognized when things were disgusting, because we have plenty of chronicles that make references to such. Now, does that mean their cities were as clean as ours? No. No, not at all. I don't mean to say that, but they also weren't, it wasn't just endless flows of fecal matter running through the street at will. It wasn't that bad. Yeah. So we'll be discussing that tomorrow and taking your questions. So yeah, the medieval buzz tomorrow morning's live stream. Well, tomorrow morning my time. Oh, look, there we have a knot because I needed to re-wax the thread. So for those who haven't done much hand sewing and you'd like to get into hand sewing, depending on how waxy your initial waxing of your thread was, you may have to re-wax your thread as you sew along, because the wax does also rub away in your fabric. So I'm going to do that once I finish this stitch. I'm going to go ahead and re-wax it. And beeswax, only use beeswax. Don't use anything but beeswax, guys. Don't try to use a paraffin candle. It will not work. Beeswax is your friend. And make sure it's pure beeswax. There's a lot of adulterated garbage floating around out there. Ideally, make friends with a beekeeper, an apiarist, and just get them to give you some of their excess beeswax. Just re-waxing this. Okay. Right. So let me just show you my progress thus far. Yeah, there you can see the stitches, those blanket stitches slash buttonhole stitches, coming along quite nicely. For those who have been wondering about my upcoming research project with Professor Dr. Minji Kim, expert in historical Korean clothing, she is now here in the same city I am here in Korea, and we plan to meet on Friday my time at the Daegu National Museum, and we're going to be plotting and planning our visits to various museums across Korea where we will be examining with our eyes and our fingers directly by holding garments, historical medieval Korean garments. I will be examining the garments from the perspective of how were these garments put together, order of operations, which layers came first, followed in, and how were they sewn in, what stitches were used, are the garments bag lined, are they flat lined, are they not lined at all, what kind of seams. So I'm going to be really looking at these garments from the perspective of how to remake them accurately in the original way. So stay tuned. I'm going to try to film everything I'm allowed to film. And if I am allowed, I will try to live stream it, especially if I can bring my cameraman with me. So we'll be talking about that, but I will be keeping you apprised of my learnings as I go along and learn them. And I'll probably be sharing all of that in advance with my channel members and patrons first. You know, one of those perks of supporting me. So yeah. Yeah, so for those just joining, welcome to my medieval sewing party. Today it is medieval because one, I'm in a reconstructed medieval building in Korea, and two, I'm working on medieval sewing. I'm obviously not attired in any vague, not even vaguely medieval clothing, not at all. Nothing about what I'm wearing even pays a nod to medieval fashion, so I'm not even going to pretend that it does. But that's not the point. I'm talking about medieval things and working on fixing my 15th century cut cloth stockings. Which brings me to the topic of knitting and knit stockings. Right, so here's the skinny, everyone. Yes, they had knitting. They knew how to knit. People were knitting in the 15th century. However, I have found no good evidence, as in no actual primary source evidence, of knit stockings in Central Europe in this era. 16th century, suddenly they start knitting stockings, but it doesn't replace, they still also have cut cloth stockings, which really leans on the idea that knit stockings are a new thing in the 16th century and are making the 16th century a transitional period from all cut stockings to eventually all knit stockings, right? So, you know, that's why, you know, if you want to be accurate, you should wear cut cloth stockings. Exceptions to that could be Spain. I haven't looked into it too deeply because I haven't actually looked, you know, Spain is not a monolith, and I haven't really dug into stockings in Spain in the 15th century. But Spain is how knitting came to Europe. It came through Spain because it was actually a Middle Eastern thing first. Oh, the mouse is back. Yeah, he's come all the way back around. See, look, there he is. We have a cute little mouse. We've got a courtyard mouse here at Starbucks in Daegu. Anyway, so knitting comes to the Iberian Peninsula via the Moorish occupation of that polity, that geographical region, and then it eventually spreads beyond that. But it doesn't seem that it's used for stockings until the 16th century. Now, in extreme Northern Europe, and I'm talking Scandinavia, Finland, the Laplands, they seem to have been null binding socks, not stockings, but socks. And that makes sense considering the extreme conditions that they were experiencing there. And there is actually an extant pair of 15th century null-bound socks. So, you know, like comes up to just above the ankle, from Sweden from the 15th century, but that's not the rest of Europe. And these are thick. They are not sexy and delicate. You could walk on the snow in them. They're so thick. Null binding is basically single needle knitting. In essence, it's like crochet without a hook. So yeah, if you want you if you want stockings and you want them to be authentic to the 15th century, for most of Europe, they're going to be cut cloth like this. These are they, and we know from the extant ones that they were cut on the bias. They were often cut on the bias in the legs, so that you have some shaping going on. It's not just saggy and baggy and big, but yeah, cut cloth, not knit. Let's see if I can make it come back. Sorry, I'm trying to actually get the chat to show me anything. Well, maybe nothing. Maybe there were, I can't believe there were no comments, so that doesn't make sense.
Did you change from all to bang and then back to all?
I did. Nothing showed up. Yeah.
No issues.
So I'm very excited about my upcoming research project into medieval Korean clothing. I will say that actually that is a fair question. Anat asked earlier about which era of clothing I love the most. So if you go beyond Europe, then I can start talking about some other areas. I really love the elegance of medieval Persian clothing. Again, it's actually, now that I think about it, it's similar to why I like 12th century French clothing or 12th century Western European clothing. Same idea. It's slinky, it's sexy, it's got all this great options for textures and embroidery and ornamentation. Then if you go to Asia, Japan, I love Heian clothing. Oh my goodness. All those layers of robes, carefully coordinated with giant sleeves and trains and long hair, just draping. Again, it's long and draping and sexy, but the problem with Heian clothing is that it's for noble women. It's designed to not be moved in. So it's very clear that social dance was not part of medieval Japanese culture, of the Heian culture at all. You can tell that based on the clothes. They're still beautiful. Then in Korea, I really love Shilla era clothing because you've got two styles of clothing in the Shilla era. And I appreciate both of them. There's the Korean Shilla, which are these beautiful skirts that are pleated and different colors of beautiful silk. And then on top of that is this really elegant robe that's fitted in the body, and it goes down to about mid-thigh, and it's got biggish sleeves. Men and women are wearing that. But then the Tang Dynasty has this amazing influence. Well, amazing, has a literally impressive influence on the Shilla dynasty. And in the 9th century, they switch over to Tang Dynasty styles, which is, again, this flowy, elegant, I think that seems to be the flowy and elegant for the win. Flowy and elegant style that it actually comes up to right under the armpits, and it's just these beautiful sleeves and all these layers of silk, and it just has this elegance about it. It probably would not look very good on me because I've got a pretty big rib cage under my armpits, but it's still beautiful nevertheless. I do also have I have developed an appreciation for 16th century Korean fashion, for early Joseon, because I especially love the skirts. They're big and they're bold, and they've got a train. I love things with trains. And they've got this fetching ruche in the front. And I have developed an appreciation for the pretty large but elegantly draping jogori that goes over top of all the layers underneath. So yeah, Joseon, early to mid Joseon fashion, absolutely for the win. I do not like late Joseon because that's when the skirts come up to here, and it's, if you have any kind of width in your ribcage, it's not a good look. Let's see, is digital ABC labeling a male rectangle sun in the 12th century? Is digital ABC labeling a male rectangle sun in the 12th century? Eric, are you high? Right. Yeah, 12th century French clothing really is wonderful. It's beautiful. It was my first home, and I wish we could find a manual or description of dance from that era that gives us a real clue as to what they're doing. I mean, I appreciate all these people who are desperately trying to create conjectural dances to suit their chosen period of reenactment, but I feel a little dirty when it's like pure conjecture instead of a description of dance plus conjecture, or a detailed description of dance plus conjecture to fill in the blanks. I prefer not to go that route. It's very hard to separate ourselves from our modern preconceptions and prejudices when it comes to creating say a 12th century dance based on the music we have, and one line in an Arthurian legend that says, "And they took hands and danced in a circle." I also have been preparing some readings for our next medieval story time. We will have another tale from Marie de France's lays, her Breton lays, as she claims, and it seems true that they are in fact from Bretagne. I also plan to do a reading from Marco Polo about Kublai Khan's court, his description of it. Now, there is intense debate about Marco Polo and the Polos in general, and how accurate their descriptions of the Khan's court are. And there are some people who have literally based their entire PhDs on demonstrating that Marco Polo was a big fat liar, and that he was never in any of the places he says he was, that he never made it there, that he just stole other people's stories. And then there's other people who've based their entire PhDs on the idea that Marco Polo was in those places. So when I say that it is highly polemic, the topic of Marco Polo and the veracity of his tales, I mean it. But the problem with Marco Polo's writings is not Marco Polo himself, but the fact that we don't have the original. The original's lost to time. Maybe someday we'll find it. I think we'll find Marco Polo's original writings in another manuscript that was basically written over top of his, where his writing was scraped away and the pages were reused. And we'll find it when they do imaging of a book, and then they can see all the original writing. That's where I think we will find his original work. But we don't have his actual original travel vlog, and everything later than his original should be suspect for modifications, for additions to make it sexier and more adventuresome, right? So there's a lot of reasons that it could well be that the versions of Marco Polo's, his Book of Wonders that we have is nothing like what he actually wrote. And so it's not a question of him being the liar or the con. It's a question of the copyists or the editors post-mortem who decided to turn it into a more exciting Clive Cussler-like action adventure. Right. So, for example, in one of the versions we have, it talks about him going to Sumatra and seeing a unicorn. And some people have used that to say, clearly, there are no unicorns, so he's a big fat liar. Okay. Stop. So again, if it was an editor who added that in later, the editor could have just realized that unicorns are a sexy hot topic, and so he added it in there to make it more saleable. But also, if you think about what a unicorn is, a unicorn, single horn, is an animal with one horn. There are rhinoceri in Sumatra, or there used to be. I don't know if there still are. I think they're extinct now, or they're gone from there anyway. But there were in the Middle Ages, and so it's possible that if he went there, he saw a rhinoceros and decided it was a unicorn, right? Especially because the definition of a unicorn in the 13th century when he lived and traveled is not exactly as neatly defined as it is later. We all think of a unicorn as being a beautiful, usually white horse, beautiful horse with a horn on it. But if you actually look at depictions of medieval unicorns, the earlier you go, the less pretty it gets. The more like a weird goat thing with a weird looking horn it becomes. Yeah. Okay, so let me show you my progress so far. Right, so those are the blanket stitches going around the edge of the patch, making pretty good progress here. You know, I know a lot of people don't like doing repairs. They don't think it's sexy, and okay, I won't disagree. I would rather be making a new thing, but when you do, you know, long medieval living history events, 1 to 2 weeks at a time, you want your stockings to not have holes in them. So here we are. Yeah, Brian Robinson, totally true about the rhinoceros, right? Yeah, so there you go. So you know, whether or not the reading that we'll be doing from Marco Polo's Book of Wonders about the Great Khan, about Kublai Khan, whether or not it is really accurate, historically real, you know, we're not going to be reading it from that perspective. We're going to be reading it from the perspective of you know, this exotic place and helping us understand what medieval Europeans understood about the court, right? Because Marco Polo's Book of Wonders was a bestseller. Make no mistake about it. As much as any pre-printing press book can be a bestseller, in the metaphorical sense, not necessarily in the literal sense, Marco Polo's Book of Wonders was. And it influenced what thousands upon thousands, if not millions actually, of Europeans understood about Asia. So from that perspective, I think it's definitely worth a read. You know, it gives us an idea into their idea of geography, into what they expected from the world out there, beyond their own borders. In the places, in the limina of the maps, you know, where it sometimes said there be dragons. Well, Marco Polo said there were. Also, he said that there were some really weird people out there. But a lot of his weird people are actually, you find them described in the works of, you know, Plato and Herodotus. And so, you know, he's not the first travel writer to just make shit up. Oh, Edward, welcome back. Welcome back. Oh, Takeda, it's literally the middle of your night. You shouldn't even be awake. I appreciate you just tuning in for some some good sleep listening, I suppose. Oh, darn it. I hate it when this happens. Can't find the end of my thread. So I like to, for my medieval sewing kits, so that when I'm at events I have, you know, authentic equipment with me, I have wrapped this in the thread so that it's not on a modern spool. And this sometimes happens that the end actually sinks into itself. And then it can be pretty tricky to find. Damn it. Oh, I wanted to show you all something. A use for finger loop braiding. So, you know, when you put wine thread onto these medieval style bobbins, spools, thread winders, there is no way to, no one thought for some reason to put a notch in to catch the thread. Medieval people also weren't traveling around taking their spools of thread with them all the time the way we do, we modern medievalists do. So maybe this wasn't an issue for them. It's an issue for me though, that if I just put this into my sewing box or into my pouch, then the thread just comes off and then you end up with massive cat's cradle mess, right? So this is finger loop braiding. I just did a short video on finger loop braiding, right? And this is actually a lace that was used on my dresses and it snapped mid lace. That's what happens. They wear out eventually and they snap. They just do, but after years of use. So I saved these little bits and I use them for other things. Sometimes you can use this to tie off braids in my hair, or with my thread, you can actually use this to secure your thread so that it doesn't unwind. And then I can just tie this like so, and now my thread will not unwind in my sewing box. So that's another use for the little short bits of finger loop braiding that are usually the result of me demonstrating a technique or teaching a class, or of the ones that break, because, you know, lacing takes a lot of, anything that I wear takes a lot of damage, it just does. Edward, keep it nice for everyone else. I appreciate it, but you know, it's okay. Okay. Right. So now back to finding. This is usually not the problem I have. Usually I have a problem with it unwinding too much, and now I can't seem to find the end. And if I can't find the end, what I end up having to do is just cut a random thread, and then eventually, you know, you unwind to the end. It happens. There it is. Okay. So, is anyone working on anything of their own? Any creative projects? Okay, there we go. Short little bit of thread, but it's better than nothing. The sun is actually setting here. Unfortunately, oh, okay, good night, Edward. Have a nice evening. The sun is actually setting here. We meant to start this a while ago, but unfortunately the microphone was not charged. And so we actually had to go out and buy a charger and charge it before we could even get started. So my family's working on some quilts. Oh, very cool. Brian, what are like patchwork or intarsia, or are you just quilting a pattern into 2 layers? Right, you know, a lot of people think of quilts as ipso facto being patchwork, but actually that's not true. The thing that makes a quilt is that it is quilted, meaning it's 2 layers of fabric that are put together, sometimes with stuffing, sometimes without, and then you quilt it. You put stitches through both layers to join them together. That is quilting. And we actually have some extant, not many, but a few extant medieval quilts. One of them is the Tristan and Isolde cycle, and it's in 2 parts. One part is in the V&A, the other part is in Florence at the Palazzo d'Avanzati, and it's a 14th century quilt, and it is giant. We don't know if it was used on a bed. It's more likely, I think, that it was a wall hanging, and it was used to help insulate the walls against the cold. And this thing is like a living cartoon strip. It's a giant cartoon strip in quilting. And the figures and the shapes and the objects that are telling the story of Tristan and Isolde are actually padded for 3-dimensionality. So there's extra padding under those figures. It's an amazing work. It's a linen, layers of white linen with cotton batting in between. If you look up Tristan and Isolde medieval quilt, you should probably be able to find imagery of it. I've got shorts on it. I definitely have a short on it on this channel, so you can look it up there in the shorts. Tristan Isolde quilt. If you just look up quilt, you'll probably find it. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. And then in Scandinavia, in the 15th century, they were making intarsia quilts. Now, this is pretty amazing. So it's their felted wool, and you literally take squares of felted wool in alternating colors, and you cut out exactly the same shapes on them, and then you swap the centers so that you have a dark outer ring and a lighter or dark outer part and an different colored inner part, and then you alternate that through the entire quilt. And so it just creates this amazing effect. So if you look up intarsia quilt, I think you can probably find pictures of that too. So, there's all kinds of different ways to make a quilt. Patchwork, doesn't come about we don't have evidence of patchwork quilts in the West until very late in our own Western history, material culture history. Meanwhile, in Asia, in Korea, they were doing patchwork for much longer because it was a way to take advantage of all of the little offcuts of very expensive fabric that resulted from the mostly efficient geometric construction of clothing. So yeah, much more. But those got turned into wall hangings. Those got turned into tablecloths. They got turned into wrapping cloths for wrapping presents and for wrapping objects as you transported them. Bodagi is the wrapping cloths are called. But yeah, everyone ipso facto thinks of quilts as being patchwork, but that is actually just a recent development in the West. Oh, Hanak. Good afternoon, good evening from Korea. Let's see, Takeda says he's working on finishing writing up and editing a version of a coronation ceremony. Oh, nice. Based on the 1 to 4 recension of the English ceremonies. Very cool. When I was Crown Queen of Drachenwald, we had a modified version of Charles V's coronation ordo, the French Charles V, not Spanish Charles V. Yeah, it was wonderful being able to do a lot of the rituals, not at least the motions of the rituals with anointing, just minus some of the more religious aspects. But yeah, doing a coronation using an actual historical ceremony is so wonderful and just makes it so rich, much richer than some kind of really modern business-like affair. A coronation should have some sense of wonder about it, some sense of transformation, a sense of spirituality and mystery, which doesn't necessarily have to have references to any specific god or any specific religious figures, but that mystery should still be there. Of course, medieval coronation ceremonies were completely different from modern reenactment organizations' versions of them, in that the only people who had access to the coronation ceremony were royal peers and the servants and retainers and, of course, the clergy. But everyone else was kept out of the cathedral until the ceremony was done. So obviously it's different in a lot of ways, but I personally prefer a good spiritual coronation ceremony myself. And I don't even care if it's Muslim, if it's Jewish, if it's Christian, don't care, Buddhist, don't care, whatever. I just prefer that sense of spiritual mystery, of some kind of a transformation that transforms the person being crowned from just a human into something somehow, at least for the time, not entirely human. But that's just me. One of the important aspects of a medieval coronation ceremony is the undressing and the dressing of the new sovereigns, king and or queen. And I think that process is a really important aspect to incorporate into a coronation ceremony, that they come dressed in their so-called old clothes, their regular clothing, and then they are stripped as part of the ceremony. Stripped is relative. And then they were redressed and anointed as the new king and queen. That really just, it adds to that sense of transformation. Ceremonies are very important. And it's a shame that a lot of modern Reformation, Protestant heretic churches, see if I can set my comments on fire, have gotten rid of the ceremony of the older churches. Because ceremonies are a method by which humans can touch the intangible. They make the intangible actually tangible. You can actually experience then in a real way something like a transformation, which is what most ceremonies. I think he's looking for that mouse. Yeah, I think he's an exterminator. Sad. Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, almost all ceremonies, whether it's a graduation ceremony, a bridge ceremony in Scouts, a wedding ceremony, they all mark they all commemorate transition, transformation, which otherwise usually doesn't come with any sort of touchable, tangible, palpable markers. So that's what the ceremony is for. And I think by eliminating ceremonies from our practices, from our lives, we have not helped ourselves to actually to really internalize these transformations. But there I am. What was your favorite coronation ceremony? My coronation ceremony was my favorite. I mean, I know that sounds not for the reasons you might think. No, because it was an actual based really heavily and in some cases exactly replicated actual medieval ceremony of that of Charles V. And we managed to take the religious aspects and transmute them into a context that made sense for the kingdom, right? So in the anointing, we actually had people bring us dirt from the four corners of the kingdom. By the way, Drachenwald, South Africa is part of it. So we actually had someone bring us dirt from South Africa. We had someone bring us dirt from the Arctic Circle. We had someone bring us dirt from Iceland. We had someone bring us dirt from I think at that point, the most eastern part was actually, the eastern part of Germany. And then we mixed that dirt with the chrism oil, with the oil for the anointing, and we were anointed with that mixture, and also from the heart of the kingdom, right, which was Germany. So we actually managed to make it so that it was a secular ceremony, but that it still had a spirituality about it. And we had a choir singing. Okay, they were actually singing real coronation songs, so some people apparently took offense to the fact that they were singing the Te Deum, but whatever. You can't please everyone. Yeah, and we had candles, and we had a procession, and we had the dressing, the ritual dressing, and people actually told us afterwards that the whole thing brought tears to their eyes. It was so beautiful. So yeah, mine definitely, I think, was my favorite, not because it was my ceremony, but because of the way it was structured. And unfortunately, I never got to see a ceremony conducted like that because no one else decided to do that at a coronation that I attended anyway. Yeah, so that was probably my favorite. Yeah, it was a pretty awesome ceremony. The seneschal actually had a garment made that was like a vestment, that was an alb. It was an alb, basically. So the seneschal actually looked like, I mean, not entirely, but similar. It evoked the idea of a bishop doing the anointing. It was great. And everyone, of course, there were a couple of people who objected, but it was pointed out that, no actual religious ceremonies were actually, it wasn't a mass or anything like that. That would have been cool, though. I would have loved to have had a mass sung. I do like a good Latin mass sung in the old way, as it were. Those beautiful counter harmonies, designed as asymmetrically as possible to prevent people from dancing to them. Yeah, good times. Yeah, in fact, one of the things I enjoy doing is designing authentic medieval ceremonies to suit, the various needs of reenactors. Actually researching and uncovering these ceremonies. An actual knighting ceremony that's based on an actual knighting ceremony, an investiture for a duke or a count or a baron that is actually based on a real investiture. I really enjoy bringing that level of realism to the game. Because unfortunately, a lot of the ceremonies that have been designed by people, I don't know, probably who did ceremonies in the military, in the U.S. military. And they definitely have a very prosaic business quality to them that doesn't make anyone want to watch or participate in any way. Were the masses, yes, were masses typical for coronation? Yes, you always had a mass sung as part of your coronation, always. In fact, even Elizabeth I, who was an Anglican queen, even her mass and her coronation ceremony were in Latin. So yeah, mass was absolutely part of it. Now, granted, I think modern people overestimate how long a medieval mass took. They didn't take forever. They didn't, like 20 minutes, 30 minutes tops. They were not, I mean, yes, there were high masses on high holy days that had a whole lot of extra things like the Litany of the Saints. But that's not the typical mass. So a coronation mass was not necessarily a massively long experience. I actually had the privilege in Florence back in 2021 when I was visiting at the end of the pandemic, which is great because there weren't many people there. I was out wandering through the countryside down a vineyard road, and I passed a 12th century church, and it had just opened, and people were going in and they were giving a concert, a free concert of a mass by Josquin des Prés, one of the premier composers of the Burgundian court in the 15th century. And they were singing the whole mass, so 30 minutes, and it was free. And I just happened to walk by at just the right moment to attend this thing. I published it on my travel channel, I'm pretty certain. I may have published it on this channel too. If you look up medieval mass, you might find it. Anyway, I actually recorded the whole thing because it was amazing. And it was such a magical experience to be in this gorgeous 12th century Italian church that still looked like the 12th century church, with this stunning carving everywhere inside this church. And the original wooden beams, and it was a choir of 10 people about. No music, so it was all a cappella, like literally a cappella. And they sang this mass by Josquin des Prés. Wow, I'm getting goosebumps just thinking about it. It was an amazing experience. So I just think about, every time I think about the possibilities for a coronation mass, I think back to that, and how that's an experience we could give people if certain people would just accept it as the historical cultural experience it is, rather than, getting wrapped around the axle about certain things. Yeah. What am I making today? I am repairing. So this is one of my bias cut stockings. It is made of linen, and we know they did make stockings of linen, so that's okay. And it had two holes in it. It had a hole here, and it had a hole here. And so I decided just to put on an entirely new sole on the bottom. So I am currently blanket stitching, already mostly done, blanket stitching this sole onto the stocking. Yeah. So I am not really making anything so much as repairing. Honestly, everyone, the majority of my time is spent repairing things, because I actually live in these garments when I wear them. I don't just, I live a medieval life in them. I do not just sit around and do nothing. I dance, I walk, I cook, I engage in a great deal of full-on physical activity the way a medieval noblewoman would have, and that results in wear and tear. And I definitely am of the school of thought that you should fix things and not just throw them out. So you should repair them and reuse them until they can't be repaired anymore. So I've got a whole rack of dress gowns, for instance, that are in dire need of repair. Hence why for the next couple of years, probably, all new dresses are going to have internal seams that are machine sewn, because I just don't have the time to hand sew everything and keep up with the amount of replacement that I will need to in order to have clothes that actually don't look like I bought them at a secondhand market. And by that I mean like the secondhand market in 15th century Bologna, where things are a little ragged. Let's see, other questions. Oh yeah, King Charles III of the UK definitely looked a military drill. Well, I think Did they actually broadcast the coronation ceremony? They don't usually broadcast, and they don't usually broadcast the actual ceremony itself. That's still one of the mysteries. I don't think they broadcast. They showed like everything leading up to it, him going in, but did they broadcast the actual ceremony? I didn't think they did. I thought that was against their policy. Because the ceremony, the coronation ceremony in England is supposed to be it's supposed to be a mystery. And I don't mean that, I mean that in the religious sense, not in the modern sense. Let's see, I find it very odd that there's so much offense that rears up in the historical recreation world, yet so many of the same people have no problem going to Rome, for instance, and sitting. Yeah, I think, so Takeda, I'm going to actually give these people some grace, because I know for a fact that there's a lot of trauma out there involving the Christian church. And I'm a Christian, I'm a Catholic, so I am in the club, and I can say this and I can acknowledge it wholeheartedly. There is a lot of trauma that many churches have done to young people. And that has left people with almost a PTSD level response. So I can't really blame them. I understand why. I get it, really. It's almost something they can't help, and a lot of probably get therapy for the kind of trauma they've had, but of course in the United States they're not going to get therapy, because that would cost money, and who has that? And it's not covered by insurance, and who has insurance anyway? So yeah, I get it. I do understand. I just wish there could be a little more flexibility, but honestly, especially in this day and age with social media hypersensitizing everyone to into a constant state of outrage, there's no way. There's just no way. Social media has done so much damage to humans and to our psychology that because it feeds off of outrage, and so it isn't designed to generate more outrage, to make people angry and upset, because that's what keeps eyes on the screen. Joy doesn't keep people engaged, tragically. Outrage keeps people engaged. So literally people are now in an almost in an autoimmune response that keeps them constantly hyped up on outrage and on the need to be offended. So we live in very troubled times, I'll just say that. Oh, well, I mean, Takeda, I think, okay, that's a little baffling. The people who do in fact go overseas, watch the services, and then get offended when they see them in their respective reenactment society, yeah, that's a little disingenuous. I'm not certain what's going on there. The people I'm thinking of whom I know personally, they couldn't go overseas and go to a mass. Like, that's how traumatized they are. So, but yeah, I'm certain there are hypocrites out there who there are always hypocrites, right? Yeah, that is strange and inexplicable. Yeah. So for those just joining, don't forget to hit that thumbs up and subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you'd like to be alerted to when I am doing other such events, such as Medieval Sewing Party. I often am in full medieval kit for medieval sewing parties. Just when I do my Starbucks, my historical Hanok Starbucks in Korea, a medieval sewing party, I'm generally not, although sometimes I am. It's been a while since I've done one, so I'm glad to be back. I'm glad I have the energy again, because unfortunately jet lag has always kicked my ass. Always. Ever since my very first trip overseas, jet lag eats me. I don't deal well with sleep disruption. So, yeah, let's see, I wonder if I can show you the courtyard here. I don't think so. Oh, sorry. I don't think so, because, no, too much reflection. Yeah, the courtyard's quite beautiful. Unfortunately, the sun is set, so it's now just pure reflection, basically. Is anyone planning on going to Pennsic this year? If there is even, And I hope the world hasn't fallen apart so much that there is no Penzik. I don't know. I'm a little skeptical about what the next year or 2 or 3 is going to bring. So yeah, I'm glad to be back and doing lives. You know, the problem with lives is that I have to be relatively well rested for them and awake, and otherwise I can't really think clearly, and I can't engage, and I can't just hold forth. So, you know, it's an hour a day usually to adjust to jet lag, and in my case, we're talking about it was a 14-hour time difference. So, yeah, I love this. I love this Hanok Starbucks. It's great. And one of the things I love about it is that they actually serve local green tea. So this is green tea. Look at these beautiful pyramid bags full of large chunk tea anyway from Jeju Island. So it is local Korean green tea, not, you know, some cheap stuff from God knows where. So everyone who criticizes me for frequenting the evil corporate overlords of Starbucks, well, but they localize here in Korea and they serve Korean products, like Korean products, not just things that are Korean-like. Of course, that being said, they do sell merchandise that's made in China, so that's not good, but at the very least, the tea is from Korea. Yeah, I did miss you all. I did do, for those who don't know, I did a lot of travel live streaming while I was traveling over the last 6 weeks. And if you're interested in seeing some of the great historic places I went in Turkey and in Europe, you can check out my travels with the Creative Contessa channel and check out those recordings of those live streams. I did a full walking tour of the 15th century harem of Topkapi Palace, and I posted that. So if you'd like to see what the harem of Topkapi Palace is like and hear about its history and explore some of its amazing spaces, you can check out that video that is uploaded and available for you to check out. I think it's on my Travels with the Creative Contessa channel. Yeah, I have a lot of different streams, content streams, because my interests are wide and varied. I tried initially to have my travels and my medieval living history creative stuff all on one channel, and YouTube punished me real badly for that with the algorithm. So I spun off and did a separate travel channel. Yeah, Takeda says he's pleasantly envious of people enjoying various local goods worldwide. Yeah, I have to say, one of the things I love about traveling is finding the real local goods. Like when we were in Athens, because we didn't want to pay $20 to see 10 columns, the 10 columns left of the the temple to Olympian Zeus, we turned left from the temple and ended up in an artisanal goods fair where there were actual farms selling their actual cheeses that they made themselves. So we were able to actually buy truly local cheeses that you're not going to get in any grocery store outside of Greece, even possibly outside of the Athens area. And we have them now. We hand imported them. We have them in our kitchen. And one of the things we got was sheep's milk cream cheese. So yummy, put on top of hot eggs, and then the cream cheese just kind of melts into the eggs. So yummy. Yeah, so I'm a big proponent of local products and purchasing local, handmade local products, spending more, buying less, rather than spending a little on a lot of junk. Yeah, very much a medieval attitude, actually. Of course, in their case, they didn't have a choice. There weren't cheap mass-produced objects, really, not by our standards anyway. So it was not really possible to become a hoarder for most people in the Middle Ages, unless your name is Medici. And then you can absolutely be a hoarder because you've got a giant palazzo and crap tons of money. And people keep giving you stuff. In the case of the Medici, they were receiving lots and lots of gifts from visitors trying to curry favor with them. And a lot of those gifts ended up in their curio cabinets. Basically, the first museums in Europe were these curio cabinets that you could actually ask to go and see and get a tour of the palazzo if you were of the right social status. And Lorenzo de' Medici you read his death inventory and you're like, dear God, how could you even walk through all of this stuff? So Takeda says that they actually have amazing farmers markets in his area, but that they're during working hours. I mean, that's kind of old school. That's silly. I mean, there's a reason that all the farmers markets I know of in places I've lived in the US were on Saturdays. Because they acknowledge that people are at work during the day in the week. So yeah, that's pretty weird. So other projects I have on my burner, other than my new big, huge, massive research project into historical Korean clothes and how they were made, which kicks off this coming Friday. Really excited about that. I'm still working on that beautiful black wool Burgundian gown, so-called Burgundian. We call it a Burgundian gown. In the era, in the 15th century, it was just called a gown. And I am working on my Nada Hennin. I actually have if you can see the update for that on my Patreon or under the membership tab on my YouTube channel, you can see the update video on that. I've got the parchment, the vellum frame all assembled, and now we're just on to the covering part. I've already kind of realized there's going to be some issues there. We'll discuss that in the next update, I guess. And I'm going to be designing what I think will be a removable cover, so that I can actually change covers and change looks if I want to, depending on the occasion, which makes more sense from a medieval perspective in my mind than having a whole bunch of different turrets, as they were called in 15th century English, instead to have one or two base turrets and then to have different covers you can put onto them. So that is 100% conjectural, but it's based on the idea that in the inventories where turrets are mentioned, they talk about the materials for a cover for one, but they don't talk about the framing materials. They keep talking about black satin for a turret. They never talk about the actual support materials. So it leads me to believe that they're talking about covers that they can put on the turrets and take off and replace as wanted. So yeah, that's a theory, and it's just based on that little bit of evidence and the idea of the practicality of, not having lots of things. A cover without the vellum frame can be folded up and put in a chest, whereas if you've got lots of different turrets, then they have to be stored somewhere. So yeah, that's my idea behind the replaceable or removable covers of various delightful forms. And for those of you who didn't hear me talk about it, my plan for the cover for this one is that it's going to be pearled fleur-de-lis framed by sprigs of couched goldwork, basically. And it's inspired by a couple of turrets that actually have pearls all over them. One belonged to Maria Portinari, and it's funny because her turret, if you look at the x-ray of her portrait, you can see the original turret was pearled with M's and T's, Maria and Tommaso. And then it was painted over for some reason. I guess they didn't like the way it looked. And then there's a second portrait of another Flemish burgess she has a truncated turret, and it is also covered in fans of pearlwork and gold. So yeah, that's what I'm basing that on. So if you're just joining, welcome to my medieval live stream. I am not dressed in medieval clothing tonight, but there it is. If you are enjoying, then please do like and subscribe. And for those who aren't tracking, I did just publish my latest long format video essay on the fascinating lives of medieval rings. Lots of good stuff in there based on primary source only. I do not regurgitate other people's research. not intentionally anyway. So lots of fun things there. I think one of the most interesting things I learned about rings that I knew, but I wasn't really tracking, I wasn't thinking about it, is how gems in medieval belief had medicinal and talismanic properties. So that means that a lot of these gems that were these jewels that were commissioned, they were commissioned with that in mind, with the idea that there should be a medicinal or talismanic effect of this piece of beautiful jewelry that you're wearing. And for that, we actually have some extant medieval gems. These are not rings, this was a pendant actually, where the back is open so that the gem, this gemstone, can actually come in contact with the wearer's skin, thereby conveying that protective or medicinal effect, transmitting it to the wearer. That was fascinating to me because, of course, we all associate that concept as being new agey, but apparently it's old agey, actually. The idea that certain precious, semi-precious, and precious stones can convey, you know, this very powerful effect. And, you know, we know, for instance, that Lorenzo de' Medici, at the end of his life, maybe this accelerated his end, he was prescribed ground gemstones to take orally because he was not doing well at the end of his life. And I don't know if I haven't read any diagnosis, if any doctors have, you know, looked at all the descriptions of his failing health and come up with some kind of reasonable diagnosis. I don't know. Cancer, in my mind, is probably the most likely. But they would grind up pearls and have him take them. I think they ground up rubies and had him take them. Ground up gold. So yeah, it's very expensive medicine. So that was something I learned in researching for my medieval rings video. You know, the idea that these are not just status symbols, they are not just beautiful, they were viewed as a practical element of health, of the maintenance of health, and also of protection against infection, protection in some cases against possession by demons, you know, things we just don't think about necessarily. Manic kitty. Ooh, kitty, a kitty lover, fellow kitty lover. I've got a kitty channel, by the way, Kitties of the Palace, if you would like to get to know my feline overlords better. Manic kitty. Wait, I love that. Which part do you love? The fact that Lorenzo de' Medici was literally grinding up precious stones and consuming them? Or that old agey, new age is actually old age? Yeah, let me know. Unfortunately, there's generally a lag between the live chat and when I've said something, just so everyone knows. For those just joining, I'm welcome to the Creative Contessa and my medieval sewing party. I am the Contessa. I'm almost done with the stocking. I'll show you my progress thus far. I am re-soling, putting a new fresh sole in the bottom of my stocking because there were giant holes in the toe and in the heel, which is pretty much where my holes in my stockings and my shoes always form. It's just where all the wear and tear goes from dancing and walking everywhere and dancing a lot. You keep looking at the back of the phone?
No, it's checking.
How low is it?
It hasn't moved. I don't
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think it ran out because I left it on. Yeah. It's extremely fascinating. It's so late, so I need to decide. However, I will be. Okay, great. Oh. Well, Manic Kitty, welcome to my community. Are you new to my community? If you are, welcome. I'm sorry if I don't remember seeing the name Manic Kitty before in my live chats. Manic Kitty. So if you're new, in fact, as I think you might be, welcome to the community. Thank you for joining. If you watch the recording, then just if you have any questions, if you put the questions in the comments, I will absolutely answer them. I always do. Yeah, so when I talked about the skin contact with the gems, yeah, I thought that was, and it's an extant gem, so you can actually see that the back has been intentionally left bare, or the gemstones. So it's like a gold frame basically around the gemstones to hold them in place, but the back is open, so contact with skin. I never even thought about that as an option, as a practice, and yet there it was. Yeah, so I learned lots of interesting things in my research for the medieval rings video. And especially, you know, when of course, obviously the ring video does discuss the topic of weddings and engagement, betrothals. And, you know, you may or may not, what I learned may or may not be what you expect. So that was pretty interesting. Of course, courtly love is also discussed in the video. That's a big part of rings, play a big part in that culture as well. You know, there's a lot of my research that I didn't end up including in the video because I had to make it end because otherwise I was just going to keep going on and on and on. Some of the things that didn't make the cut were demon talismanic rings to protect against demons, for instance. Solomonic rings, you know, rings, so-called magic rings that were created using rituals based on, you know, this kind of Solomon, like King Solomon of the Old Testament. And we actually have some extant ones that some of those have survived, those rings. What else did I discover that I didn't? Oh, I didn't even talk about all of the magic rings that appear in the Arthurian legends. It's like, honestly, if you read the Arthurian legends, you cannot possibly be a knight of any note unless at some point in your journey you encounter a magic ring. It's just not going to happen. You are no one. You are no one as a knight in the world of Arthur unless you at some point have to deal with a magic ring, usually to your detriment. So yeah, there's a lot of things I didn't include in this video because I've just found myself never ending basically because I kept finding more and more interesting details about rings and their role in medieval life. So I just had to stop. I'm like, yep, this is it. This is where we're cutting it off. We're cutting it off here. Yeah. So Shosas said that, Takeda says that his new wool Shosas held up for the fair. Ooh, nice. Takeda, did you cut the Shosas on the bias or did you cut them straight grained? Inquiring minds want to know. Yeah, Manic Kitty, I am an explorer of rabbit holes par excellence. I have to rein myself in because otherwise I just continue. I go, you know, from one hole to another like a rabbit warren of discovery. So I do find myself having to be very disciplined about how I look for and explore knowledge. Okay, well everyone, we're getting on towards dinner time here, and I know all of you are like, dinner time? Yeah, for those who don't know, I am currently in Daegu, South Korea, and so it is 6 p.m. based on the light, almost 6 p.m. where I am, to give you an idea of the time difference between us. So yeah, it's getting, unfortunately this started way later than we'd intended it to because of technical issues. So yeah, a lot of my viewers are either at work now or asleep or trying to be asleep. Takeda says, sadly I had to cut the Shosas straight grained since it was a small remnant. Yeah, I totally understand. How do they fit in terms of sag and fit? So some wool is woven to have a natural sort of stretch, or if you wash it, then sometimes that'll give it a natural stretch before you cut it. But yeah, the saggy Shosas are sad. By the way, for those who do sort of mid 14th century going forward, your chausses, you should not be able to see your braids under your coat. Your chausses should go all the way up to your waist basically and cover your butt, even though they're split. You should not have diaper butt. There should be no diaper butt. That is not an authentic look for anyone, unless you're maybe okay. If you're a peasant, you can have diaper butt. I'll concede that. If you're a peasant, you can absolutely have diaper butt. But if you're not a peasant, you shouldn't have diaper butt. That was back 25 years ago, when chausses and braids started being worn. People were wearing chausses that were not appropriate to their late 14th century depictions. So they were wearing 12th and 14th style chausses with second half of the 14th century style coats, which are short. And it's not a good look. It's definitely, and everyone thought, oh, that looks so authentic. It does not. It looks like you are a fool, literally a fool. So sorry, Takeda, I'm not, if your chausses give you diaper butt, I'm only criticizing you affectionately in a little bit. Good night, Manic Kitty, and I look forward to seeing you again. Welcome to the community. Welcome to my court, as I'm starting to call it. Takeda says they're a bit saggy. I need to adjust the seams near the knees. Yeah, the problem with when you have to cut it straight grain, as you probably know, but in case you don't, I'll just remind you, the problem with straight grain chausses and trying to cut them to fit all those curvy bits is that you have to find a balance between it creates shape, but still allows your leg to get through that spot without it having any elasticity. That's a problem around the ankles, for instance, and can be a problem around the knees. So just don't take it in bit by bit carefully, and keep taking it on and off to make sure you can take it on and off, I guess is my caution there. See. Yeah, so that's my only caution there. Almost done. Almost done. Handsome, if you want, you can go ahead and put away spare needles and pins and stuff while I finish up this seam. By the way, since I'm repairing clothes, I thought I'd close off with this little tidbit. People have been often ask me in these medieval sewing parties where I'm repairing things, how authentic is it for a noble woman or noble man's garments to be repaired rather than just cast off and passed on to someone else? It is 100% plus. If it's possible to be more than authentic, it's absolutely 100% authentic. In the 15th century, earlier centuries too, the 14th century for certain, and in the 15th century, we have plenty of bills and expense accounts for mending, for the mending of garments. I was just recently, once again, trawling through Queen Margaret of Denmark's expense accounts, and there are numerous bills in them for her garments being mended, gowns and kirtles, by the way. So it is very, very authentic for even a king's and a queen's garments to be mended for their use, not just to then be passed on. So absolutely, things are mended. Now, they were mended, no doubt, in as invisible a manner as possible so that you don't have visible patches and, giant, jagged seams. No doubt, they were mended in such a way as to be cleverly hidden, the repairs to not be terribly obvious. But absolutely, mending 100% a practice for even the most toppest, wow, talk about English, I can English, the most elevated level echelons of society. Now, granted, there comes a point at which garments just cannot be repaired anymore in any sort of reasonable manner. And that is probably the point. That is the point at which medieval garments tended to be cut down for smaller humans or to be turned into a different garment that required less fabric, right? But until the garment, reaches the point of irreparability, it gets repaired. Okay, here we are, almost done. So I would just like to take this moment to thank my patrons and my channel members for supporting my work, for being a very active part of my community. I really thank you. Your generosity is noted, especially in this day and age. I would also like to thank Armor and Castings, my channel sponsor, who also sponsor my work. They make a lot of the beautiful replica jewelry that you all comment about in my videos. The collar, my rings, my brooch, my pendants. And I would like to just thank the rest of you for being part of the community, for participating in the live chat, for hitting the thumbs up, for leaving comments under the videos. You know, all together, I think we're building a beautiful phenomenon, a beautiful court, a beautiful community of creativity and positivity and support. And so I thank you all for coming with me on my journey of creative learning. So stay tuned. Tomorrow or later today, depending on your time, will be the Medieval Buzz with Philip from Irish Medieval History. And in the coming days, there'll be more sewing parties, medieval story time, and live medieval cooking with the Contessa. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up and subscribe. Okay, so I'm almost done. I'm going to show you what it looks like done. Just give me a second to put a knot here in the end of the thread. Oh, I've got a needle to put in the needle one, not the pin one. No, that's the pin one. The other one is the what?
No, it's the needle one. But I put needles in it.
Okay, could you get the other one out, please? They're gonna have to be fished out of there. Okay, so let me pull the pins out. Okay, so here it is. Here it is, all finished. You can see the blanket stitch all the way around. So no more holes, and you know, for a while, hopefully there won't be holes because this is fusty and it's pretty heavy duty. So yeah. Okay, so everyone, I would like to thank you for joining me for this medieval sewing party. For those who have just found me, welcome to the community. For those who have missed my live streams, welcome back, everyone. Don't forget to check out my new video on the fascinating lives of medieval rings. And if you have any questions that I didn't address in the live chat, then pop them in the comments and I will get to them. Otherwise, until next time, everyone, may your adventures in history and the exploration thereof be creative. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night to everyone.